What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and on today's video we are going to be reviewing what I think is one of the best racing shoes of 2024. This is my review of ASICS METASPEED EDGE PARIS. Now, of course you all know that there is a partner shoe to this, the METASPEED Sky Paris, and I haven't run in the METASPEED Sky Paris, but I have run in the METASPEED Sky Plus. So in this video, when I tell you all about the METASPEED EDGE Paris, I'm also going to be describing some of the differences between the Edge and the Sky Paris. Let's get into it. First things first, let's get started with those disclosures. Roadrunner Sports was good enough to send me the ASICS METASPEED EDGE Paris for the purpose of review. However, they haven't told me what to say, they don't have any editorial privileges, and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. With that said, you can pick up a pair of the METASPEED EDGE Paris or the METASPEED Sky Paris from Roadrunner Sports for $250. Now, both the METASPEED EDGE Paris and the METASPEED Sky Paris have the same drop. We have 39.5 in the heel, 34.5 in the forefoot for a 5mm drop. Now, overall, both shoes are very similar. So we're going to start at the top, we're going to work our way down, because the upper of both shoes is exactly the same. If I hold this up, you can see we have a good amount of padding coming around the heel collar. It's not one of those ultra minimalist heel collar, but there is more than enough padding here to get a good lockdown around your heel. And of course, that heel lockdown is assisted by this semi-rigid heel counter. And if I really push, I'm able to push in like that, but it's not super floppy. It's just not super rigid. Anyway, I didn't have any issues with the heel lock in the METASPEED EDGE Paris. The upper has been improved over 2022's Edge Plus. ASICS has gone from Motion Wrap to Motion Wrap 2.0. It's very light, it's very breathable. To me, this is exactly what I think of when I think of a race day upper. If it's a very cold day, your feet are going to get cold in this upper because it's providing no protection from the wind. Like the wind is going to go straight through this. It is very breathable. On the flip side, on very hot days, your feet are going to stay very cool with this Motion Wrap 2.0 upper. You know, I realized I totally forgot to tell you guys about weight, which is strange because the weight of the METASPEED EDGE Plus and Sky Plus for that matter is one of the biggest seller points of this shoe. So by now we all know that all the brands are coming out with their race day options. They're making their shoes as light as possible. We're using very similar components, usually a PEBA-based foam with a carbon fiber plate inside. But until now, the competition has been the Nike Vaporfly 3. And up until now, the Nike Vaporfly 3 has been the lightest shoe that I have. And honestly, the Vaporfly 3 feels incredibly light on your foot. Now, ASICS claims that in a US men's size 9, the METASPEED EDGE Paris will only tip the scale at 6.5 ounces or 185 pounds. That is so light. But in my size, obviously the weight goes up a little bit, and now it weighs 7.9 ounces or 225 grams. But get this, my size in the Nike Vaporfly 3 is 8.3 ounces or 236 grams. That makes, in my size, the Vaporfly 3 11 grams heavier than the METASPEED EDGE Paris. Pretty good. Okay, now back what I was saying about the upper. ASICS is definitely saving weight. There are not a lot of overlays. The ASICS logo is just printed right on the Motion Wrap 2.0 upper. We do have a little bit of an underlay coming around the toe box, just to give that little reinforcement. There is some reinforcement coming around the heel cup. Again, that's what makes that semi-rigid heel counter. And then we have a little bit of reinforcement coming along the eyelid chain, but when I'm looking closely at it, it looks like just a really thick weave of Motion Wrap 2.0. The tongue, again, is exactly what we'd expect on a race day tongue. It is so crazy thin. It's almost like a faux suede, and it's very flimsy. Now, we do have a lace loop right here in the middle, and the tongue is not gusseted. So this is one of my first complaints with the METASPEED EDGE Paris, and obviously the METASPEED Sky Paris is going to suffer from the same thing, is that you have to be a little careful seating your foot inside the shoe because this light faux suede tongue is very easy to get folded over on top of your foot. Of course, it's no big deal to kind of just stick your finger in and kind of make it flat on top of your foot. But if you're really in a hurry to put these shoes on, that could take an extra 4 or 5 seconds. Anyway, once the tongue is seated correctly, I didn't experience any issues. I found it very comfortable. There is not a lot of padding in the tongue. In fact, I'd say there is no extra padding in the tongue. It is just that very thin suede. So if the tops of your foot are very sensitive to lace bite, maybe you'll experience that, but I actually didn't have that problem at all. It was a very good midfoot lockdown. I didn't have any hot spots coming along the top of my foot. The laces are really the only type of laces that is good in a race day shoe nowadays. In my opinion, it's a serrated lace. So when you tie them, they don't come untied. They kind of lock together nicely. And then we come down to the midsole. ASICS is using a brand new top-of-the-line PEBA foam. It's Flight Foam Turbo Plus. The previous version of the METASPEED series had Flight Foam Turbo, and this is one of the biggest departures between the Paris and the Plus. The Flight Foam Turbo Plus is light years ahead of the Flight Foam Turbo. And I'm going to come right out there and say it, that the Flight Foam Turbo Plus to me is just as good as Zoom X foam. Just to pull out my prop again, this shoe feels just as good as this shoe. Okay, now let's just just talk about a couple of the changes. I do have my pair of Metaspeed Sky Plus, and I'm going to hold it up and you can see. Now, I really like this. When this shoe was released, I really like the styling of this midsole foam. It looks very bulbous here in the front, almost like the big bonnet of a car, but they made it a little more streamlined in the Edge Paris and the Sky Paris. And of course, they've totally changed the foam, so it is totally different. Now, something to show you is you might be a little confused between the Edge Paris and the Sky Paris on how to look at them. I mean, they really do look remarkably similar, but the easiest way for you to tell the difference is with this little yellow bit right here. You can see on this pair of the Edge Paris, the little yellow piece only takes up about a third of the midsole foam. Now on the Sky Paris, this yellow piece is quite substantially bigger and it takes up about half of the midsole foam. Now this yellow painted piece of the midsole is also an indicator of where the carbon fiber plate sits within the midsole. So in my pair of the Metaspeed Edge Plus, the carbon fiber plate is going to start high in the heel and it's going to angle sharply down to the forefoot where it's very close to the ground. So there is a minimal amount of foam between the ground and the carbon fiber plate in the Edge Plus. Now in Sky Plus, it's a little different. Instead of having this scooped carbon fiber plate, the carbon fiber plate in the Sky Plus is more straight across. Now, maybe you have done enough research where you have finally been able to nail down the difference between the Edge Plus and the Sky Plus, and you know which one would be right for you. But I gotta tell you that if this is your first time looking or first time shopping for either the Edge or the Sky, it's a little more tricky than it seems. Now, before I bought my Metaspeed Sky Plus, I went through and I looked through all my data, because by now you know that ASICS advertises the Edge as being for cadence runners and the Sky as being for stride runners. So let me tell you what ASICS actually says about both of them. For Metaspeed Edge Paris, the carbon plate is more curved and situated lower within the shoe's midsole, creating a softer feel and energy return that propels you forwards and speeds up your stride. The shoe is therefore best suited to high cadence runners who tend to take more strides as they speed up on their run. Got that? Now let's talk about the Sky, and I'm going to put my Sky Plus away because we are talking about the Sky Paris, even though they're made for the same runners. But for Metaspeed Sky Paris, the carbon plate is situated higher within the shoe's midsole, creating energy return that propels you in a more vertical direction and extends your stride. This shoe is therefore best suited to runners who tend to take longer strides as they speed up their run. Now look, before I chose the Metaspeed Sky, I did go through all my running data and I looked at my cadence and my stride length, and based on that actual concrete data gathered from my watch on every single run, I determined that I was a stride runner. However, when I put the Sky Plus on my foot, I noticed something was missing, but because I had paid full price for that shoe, I didn't want to go out and drop another $250, so I stuck with it. And I thought the Sky was a great shoe, I just wouldn't use it for the marathon. I came to the conclusion that for runners who run how I run, I needed to run a little faster than marathon pace in order to actually utilize the Sky Plus, or the Sky Paris in this case. Now fast forward to the Edge Paris, and I found that this shoe works like a dream for me. Remember, we've got that high carbon fiber plate in the heel, which means when I heel strike, I have a nice soft touchdown, and then it turns out that I do favor a scooped carbon fiber plate where it comes down, and when I roll through my gait cycle and push off, I get a very good feeling of rolling forward, kind of pushing me forward, rather than, as ASICS says, providing vertical movement, which it does in the Sky Paris. Look, I get it, it's very confusing, and I don't want to boil it down to the fact that I am a heel striker, and because I'm a heel striker, the Edge Paris works better for me. That's just how it happens to work out. Okay, now I want to put up on your screen this spec sheet, and I just found it online, but if you want to pause this video and pore over this spec sheet, you can. Basically, it just tells you all about the Sky Paris and the Edge Paris. But I want to draw your attention to where the carbon fiber plate sits in the shoe, because I think this is the best representation of where the plates sit. And just by this plate placement, I think it's pretty obvious to see how the shoe rides. The Edge Paris is going to roll a little more, and because of the flatter carbon fiber plate in the Sky Paris, you can see how it would possibly provide more of a vertical lift. Now, right at the bottom, I want to draw your attention to the toe spring curve. On the left, the Sky Paris has a very late rocker, which says it is optimized for stride style, and on the right, we have an earlier rocker, which says it is optimized for cadence style. Now, just looking at these two diagrams of the toe spring curve, I can actually tell by looking at this diagram that I am going to favor the toe spring on the Edge Paris. So now I want to hear from you. Looking at this diagram again, which do you think would work best for you? Let me know in the comments. Okay, so I think that's a good description of the two very similar shoes, the Edge Paris and the Sky Paris. And I realized I really haven't gone into ride and how it feels to run in these shoes, or at least the Edge Paris for me. And it's at this point I wish I was just a little more articulate to describe how this shoe feels on my foot, but The upper, I don't think the upper is anything to write home about. I think ASICS has done a good job, but I think a lot of other shoes really compete well with their upper. It's very light. I get a good lockdown, no complaints, no hot spots. Everything just feels good. For me, the star of the show in the Metaspeed Edge Plus is the geometry. Now, of course, you could put this geometry in a shoe that was far heavier without a carbon fiber plate and it wouldn't be the same. But I think for the Metaspeed Edge Paris, it is more than the sum of its parts. The foam, the plate, the geometry all come together to make a very enjoyable ride. I found that when I was doing marathon pace workouts, I was able to focus on the shoe. And by that, I mean when I started getting tired, I was able to focus on the shoe and how it was pulling me forward, pushing me forward, and making me feel on the run. And to me, because I've run in a lot of carbon plated super shoes, I can tell the difference. And honestly, some are far better than others at kind of taking your mind off of the run itself and realizing that the shoe is giving you some kind of assist. And I felt that way in the Metaspeed Edge Paris. Now, is this an unfair advantage? Perhaps. But to me, my experience with the Metaspeed Edge Paris, and I had the same experience in the Nike Vaporfly 3, is that when I put this shoe on my foot, it felt like I was running in a super shoe, and it felt like I was going to be faster because I was wearing this shoe. Now, obviously we got a big stack height 5mm drop, which I think is pretty ideal for me, but there's lots of PBA foam. It's very protective and felt nice and soft underfoot. Not too soft. For me, the Vaporfly 3 feels a little softer, but softness isn't everything. But with my experience with super shoes that I've run in, I'm going to say that perhaps if I had the Saucony Endorphin Elite on one end of the spectrum being slightly firmer and then the Vaporfly 3 on the other end, the ASICS Metaspeed Edge Plus is going to be a little closer to the Vaporfly 3 end of the spectrum than the Endorphin Elite end. So look, again, this is a super shoe. It costs you $250. This is one of those super shoes that I think is worth the $250 price tag. I do understand that companies have to price their super shoes at the $250 mark, but I think ASICS could have easily bumped it up to $260, $275, and it would have been justified. So $250 is a good price. Look, it's expensive. We're not going to get away from that now. But as of the making of this video, I can say right now that the Metaspeed Edge Paris is definitely in contention for being the best carbon-plated super shoe of 2024. Let me know your thoughts. Have you run in any of the Metaspeed line? Have you chosen the Edge or the Sky? I'm curious to hear about what you liked about one or the other. And with that, just a reminder, I will place a link in the show notes below in case you want to pick up a pair of the Metaspeed Edge or Sky Paris for yourself. Oh, and I would just like to ask if you've enjoyed this video, if you found it informative, I'd love for you to consider subscribing and, of course, leave a like on this video. And with that, it's Matt B. This has been my review of the ASICS Metaspeed Edge Paris. Be kind, be happy, run well. I'll see you in a couple of days.